Reality is the raw material. Language is the way I go in search of it and the way I do not find it. But it is from searching and not finding that what I did not know was born, and which I instantly recognize. Language is my human effort. My destiny is to search, and my destiny is to return empty handed. But I return with the unsayable. The unsayable can only be given to me through the failure of my language. Only when the construction fails can I obtain what I could not achieve. Have you ever listened to songs that talk about a river? And this river is never really named, it's just referred to as the river. Take me to the river, plunge into the river, dive into the river, plunge into the deep end. I always picture this one body of water that is large enough that I don't see the borders around me, and it has a mild enough current that I'm being carried very lightly as I float. But this is exactly what this novel asks of you. It asks you to plunge into a single moment. But this moment has been stretched into eternity. And, well, yeah, let's get into it. So, hi, I'm Emily. This is the Linguist Library. We talk about literature and languages here. If you like that sort of thing, don't forget to like and subscribe so other people who have the same taste as you can also come across this video. Now, I'm not really sure on how to title this video. I thought about how to read The Passion According to GH by Clarice Lispector. And then I thought about the Lispector experience, The Passion According to GH, because this is not really a review as much as it is a guide and an analysis and a potential interpretation. So, I try to dress a little bit like what I feel when I read it. So, we're reading the story of this sculptress in Rio, and this has a lot of similarities between other Clarice's work. She likes artists. So, for example, A Breath of Life, you're talking about an author. In Agua Viva, you're talking about an artist. So you have authors, you have writers, you have sculptors. She likes creators. She likes talking about people who create things. And I feel like she feels comfortable with that, probably. That's probably easy for her to translate into the page. So, one thing about Clarice, if you don't know a lot about her, if this is your first time hearing about her, you're probably new to this channel because we talk about her a lot here. She is one of my favorite authors of all time. I use my handle Clarice because of her. I've read just about everything she's written. I think I haven't read all of the letters that she wrote to her sisters, but I have read her chronicles, her children's books, her short stories, and all of her novels. I have a video on where to start with her where I talk about her life and her work chronologically. So if you're interested in that, I'll link it in the description box and as well as in the cards somewhere in here. But this, The Passion According to GH is one of those literary works that you have to start with the title when you're talking about this one, because it is so densely packed with jams, and they're all intentional. So, The Passion According to GH. Now, as some of you know, Clarice Lispector is a Brazilian author who originally wrote in Portuguese. So, in Portuguese, we revert the order and we say gênero humano. So, human gene would be the direct translation. And the passion according to the human gene, if we were to look at one of her direct translations for this title, we would be looking at the passion according to the human race. So, for example, you have the passion according to Jesus Christ or the passion according to John. So it's a very theological sort of view into the human experience, right? So that's what the book is about. That's one of the themes that she explores here. So once again, let's talk about how the story goes. This is not a plot novel by any stretch of the imagination. This is about being. It's about the experience of being a live, movable feast. So, let's talk about when she enters. So the story takes off when our sculptress in Rio enters into her former maid's room. She goes into this part of her house that really supposed to be hers, but it doesn't feel like she knows it well because the rest of her house is full of water and plants. And this particular bedroom feels dry and barren. But so we have this contrast of her life and the life that this person that is so close to her, yet she knows nothing about. Clarice Lispector is a modern writer, which means she likes her novels to be short and they kind of stretch into a very short period of time, kind of like Virginia Woolf. So she's also writing with that style, stream of consciousness. And so it's not very linear, which is why I think that this conversation about the novel is not going to be that linear either. But we're going to try our best to stay in track, okay? So our main character, the sculptress, that we only know by her initials, GH, she, after we've been... Oh, there's one thing that I would like to mention. There is an introduction to this novel that I think is quite unique in and of itself. So it's not a dedication per se, it's more like an introduction, but it does give you an idea of what we're talking about. So Clarice asks that readers who've lived a little, who have their frontal lobe fully developed, people who have lived at least half a life. You know, I think she reminds me a little bit of how the Divine Comedy starts halfway through life. And she asks her readers, she doesn't ask, and she says that it's not a requirement, but she feels like this novel would be more thoroughly appreciated by people who have lived a little. So that gives you an idea that this is an introspective novel about life and the course of human life, right? So the passion according to GH. Let's go back to the moment that our main plot point takes place. So GH enters the maid's room, and the maid here, she represents a lot in terms of society. So she represents the other, but also within the same species. And we're going to get to the species, and that's important because one of the things that happen, other than the fact that this room feels foreign, feels dry, barren, is that there are some pictographs on the wall. There are some images on the wall, and it's a woman, a man, and a dog, and they're naked. And we have this question: why would the maid draw on the wall? And what did she mean by it? And who are the people that she drew? GH does have a dog, but she's divorced. So it's interesting to see that image there. And the part, the fact, so the fact that GH is divorced is important for many reasons, because once we get through the cockroach part, so the cockroach part is when humans and humans societies over the course of life, ever since it started and we know of it, um, how do we deal with other species? How do we categorize them? How do we say that a certain species is gross, a certain species is cute, and how and why are they perceived the way that they are perceived? At this point, we start to notice the use of the third leg metaphor. So we have a metaphor that GH uses to express herself, and it's about this third leg that she had for a while, and now she doesn't have it anymore, and she misses it. And why does she miss it? Is she weaker now that she doesn't have the leg anymore? But she never had it in the first place when she was younger. So why does she need it now? Is she getting weaker? And this is interesting because, and I don't like to jump into interpretations that have to do with an author's personal life. And to a certain extent, I agree with Fernando Pessoa that interpretation of a literary work shouldn't even be discussed so much, because it should be left to the reader. But it is interesting to know that this novel was written after Clarice Lispector had gotten a divorce. So she divorced her diplomat husband, and she went back to Rio, and she got her own apartment. She got her own place where she lived with her children. And she essentially sort of fell into her writing full time, and that was her life, right, after the divorce. So once you read that and you understand that sometimes marriage can be used as a social clutch for, for people to fit in, especially women, but also men. I obviously can speak from my own experience. So I am a woman, so I'll speak from my point of view, right? It can be used as something that readily places you somewhere in society. People know what to expect from you. They know how you should behave. It's easier that way. It's more comfortable for everyone around. So once you have that knowledge, you can't unsee it, right? So the third leg, at least that's the way I've always perceived this third leg metaphor. We're left stumbling after something as seismic as a divorce happens. So it makes sense. And the more you read about GH's experience and her deconstruction of society and how we perceive things, sometimes because we want to, sometimes because we are perceived that way, whether we want it or not, it feels like it's a relevant thing to mention. So I thought we should talk about it. In terms of other works, Clarice Lispector is one of those introspective authors that, kind of puts up a mirror and shows you how you are. And I think that it's quintessential to remember that you can only see, you can only find things that you're looking for. So people who are deep will find very deep things when a mirror is kind of held up to their face. So this novel is about surrendering to that moment. It's about surrendering to the imagination. And sometimes even I like to read Clarice and imagine myself to be entirely bodiless, just an energy floating around, because that's kind of how that's how big she is. She's so limitless and boundless that it's impossible to picture her uh, fitting within her own skin. There's no edges to her, and there's just no end to her mind. But if I were to look at other philosophical works that kind of talk about similar themes, I would probably compare this to Notes from Underground by Dostoevsky, and maybe Waves if we're talking about Virginia Woolf. And I like to link in Virginia Woolf to Clarice Lispector because of their writing styles. So if you enjoy Woolf, you're very likely to enjoy Clarice. But I also see a lot of similarities between Sylvia Plath and Clarice Lispector in terms of the depth and the intensity with which they express themselves. So this, The Passion According to GH, not so much. I think that The Arrow of the Star is the most Sylvia Plath of her novels, but I digress. Let's go back to you guys. So some of you started reading Clarice because of me, and I'm so happy about that. I've heard so many good stories and so many interesting reactions. Some of you cried. One of you told me last week that you cried reading Near to the Wild Heart, which is her first novel, her debut novel. And I want to know if it was at the end, because what happens when I read Clarice is usually I have such a cathartic experience that I end up crying at the end. But if it wasn't at the end, let me know when you cried, and let me know how the Clarice experience has been for you guys. If you have any questions about her original manuscripts, I have had access to a few of them. Before I go, allow me to mention I now have a members only club that everyone is invited to participate if you can afford it. I would love to have you. I try to do live streams, and I definitely do chats at least every week. We're going to start now in the members clubs, but I also do polls for the members to choose the classic that we're going to read that month. So for the month of February, I am going to be talking about The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte, because I am reading everything the Brontes wrote. And I've read Agnes Grey, and I've read a few essays that Anne Bronte wrote. So I'm excited to talk about Anne Bronte. And I will be doing that first and foremost in the group, but I'll also release that video later for everyone else. So look out for that. Thank you so much for being here until the end. If you stayed, I'm so grateful. Don't forget to check out the community tab. I'm always posting quizzes, pictures, and all sorts of interesting things, and sometimes even memes. But yeah, I think that is it for today. Let me know what you think about Clarice and what video you want to see me do next in the comments. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time, and bye. It's 5 feet of snow outside. I wanted to show you guys something that I have learned recently. So I don't use tea bags anymore. I use this little guy, this metal container with this hook at the end that kind of hooks to the edge of the mug, and then either my herbs, or in this case I have a hibiscus tea here. You can see how rich and red it gets. I love this. This is so much healthier than the microplastics in all the tea bags. So that's my gift to you. It's not sponsored. It's just healthy, and I'd love for everyone to be healthy.